It's Friday, Bill.
Friday it is. How you doing? You all right?
I'm all right.
It's a Friday in August.
It sure is.
Extra special. I'm Bill Hemmer. How you doing, folks? The economy adding 157,000 jobs in the month of July. Unemployment rate drops 3.9%. We are back under 4. Haven't seen that number in 18 years. Wages also increasing last month, just a little bit ahead of inflation. White House Director of Strategic Communications, Mercedes Schlapp, giving the credit to the president just last hour.
These are significant numbers. Our economic fundamentals are strong. There is no question that because of President Trump's leadership, his vision on terms of pushing forward economic policies like tax cut and tax reform, in addition to his deregulatory agenda, it's working.
That from last hour. John Roberts this hour, live from the North Lawn. How you doing, John? Good morning there.
Good morning to you, Bill and Sandra. There's no question that the economy is doing well. The jobs report, not quite what was expected. The White House putting its best spin on it, though. Economists had expected that the economy would create in the month of July somewhere between 190 and 195,000 jobs. The actual number for July was 157, as you pointed out, but the numbers for May and June were revised upwards. So the three-month average for job creation was 224,000 jobs. The chief economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, saying this morning that things are much better than the raw number for July would suggest, and that the forecast for economic growth is good. Listen here.
We're really at a high plateau. The data today, manufacturing was strong, professional services, unemployment went down. I mean, it's a very nice report. The Atlanta Fed GDP Now model, preliminary, is predicting 5% for Q3. I mean, I would be happy with 3, but they're predicting 5, so we're off to a good start.
If the GDP growth hit 5% for a quarter, that really would be something. You pointed out the unemployment number dropping below 4% to 3.9. That's just 0.2 of a percentage point off of a historic 50-year low that was set back in 1969. Some good news and some bad news on wage growth. The bad news is the wage growth was 2.7% year over year. There wasn't any movement there. The good news is that it's below the 3% threshold that might trigger some more aggressive action in raising interest rates by the Fed. So there's something for a lot of people in this.
Got it. President continues to go after this Russia matter, the Russia investigation, and the media as well. Saw him on stage last night in Pennsylvania, John.
Yeah, and of course, all of this stems to earlier this week where the president created a lot of headlines by going further than he ever has before in saying that the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, should shut down the Russia investigation. Well, the president went off on the Russia investigation again last night, as he has many times in the past, saying it's a hindrance to bettering relations with Russia. Also taking off on the media again for its reporting of the Helsinki summit between the president and Vladimir Putin. Listen here.
We're being hindered by the Russian hoax. It's a hoax, okay? I got along great with Putin. And everybody said, wow, that was great. A couple of hours later, I started hearing these reports that, you know, they wanted me to walk up. Here's a podium here. They wanted me to walk up and go like this. Son of a big ball. They wanted me to go up and have a boxing match.
The president also slamming coverage of his meeting with the Queen from that same trip. It had been reported that he was late for the visit and that they only talked together for a few minutes. He said, in fact, he was 15 minutes early, and they had a lovely chat for about an hour. Bill?
Thank you, John. John Roberts from the North Lawn. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Bill.
I would personally prefer before, but whether it's before or after, we're either getting it or we're closing down government. We need border security. We need border security.
President Trump repeating his commitment to build that wall, even if he needs to shut down the government to get the money for it. Joining me now, Chris Wallace. Chris, good morning to you. Is this a good idea?
Good morning to you, Sandra.
Yeah. What do you think about this? Doubling down on this call.
Well, yes, but he didn't make it clear whether he's talking about a shutdown before or after the election, and that's the key. The president, it's been interesting to watch his sort of stream of consciousness because he's been very open in the various arguments for and against this. He thinks, one, it's a good issue, that it'll bring out the base. He also thinks and that means doing it before the election, doing it around September 30th when the government would run out of money. And he also thinks that it will put more pressure on Democrats because it'll be a big issue and they'll be asked about it. On the other hand, there are an awful lot of the Republicans. Remember, he's not on the ballot in November. It's congressional Republicans in the Senate and the House who are on the ballot. They think it's a terrible idea because they think, given all of his threats, that he will be blamed. He'll be seen as the person who led to the shutdown of the government. And generally speaking, in the polls, you see that the American public does not like the idea of a shutdown and tends to blame the person they hold responsible for the shutdown. So there is a great nervousness on the part of Republicans. They were not so upset about the idea of a shutdown after the midterms, maybe in a lame duck session, but they sure don't want to see it before the midterms where they think it'll create a backlash against them.
And the president acknowledged that. He said a lot of great Republicans are pointing to the strength in the economy. Say, tout that, go off of that for the midterms. But he did not want, and he said he didn't want to complicate what voters are seeing ahead of the polls, ahead of the midterms. He said, I understand it. I'm a little torn myself. But clearly he still sees this, Chris, as the winning strategy. And last hour, or earlier in the show, we had on the president of the National Border Patrol Council, Brandon Judd. He, too, supports a shutdown. Listen.
I would absolutely 100% support a shutdown, and I'm a federal employee. It will affect me. It will affect my family. But I can tell you that without border security, we just don't have the safety and security. When I was a little kid growing up, my parents had no problem letting me walk a mile away to go to the park. Today, parents just don't let that happen because they're too worried about crime in the United States. Some
support there for sure. Chris?
Yeah, well, I think to a certain degree, and you're exactly right, that the president has been kind of, in a stream of consciousness way, arguing both sides of it. You know, the arguments that he feels that maybe before the election, the arguments of a lot of his colleagues in Congress who are going to be on the ballot maybe after the election, and perhaps he's trying to have the best of both worlds, raising the issue, ginning up his base, getting them excited and upset about the issue of border security, and that he's for closed borders and tough border security, and he claims the Democrats are not. But if he can have the argument without actually shutting down the government, I suppose that would be the best of both worlds for him and for Republicans.
And the president saying we're about to get really nasty over the wall. So we will see where all of this goes. Chris Wallace, we will see you this weekend.
Let's make a date. Yeah.
Okay.
You bet, Sandra.
Fox News Sunday. Chris Wallace, thank you.